Okay, so it's been a while. I thought, hey, it would be cool to make video about explaining the mechanics of the game while playing Draft, but that was boring and took too long. So instead I'll just show pictures of the faction's main mechanics and showing the cards that you could expect to fight and see in the ranked game. So the main gimmick of the Ultramarines is Codex, no duh. The
Codex Astartes
mechanic activates whenever your energy reaches 0 and all of your
Codex Astartes
effects will then trigger. Currently there are only 2 ways to really make use of this mechanic. The first is Tactical Insight. So long as you can spend the energy, it'll give you good value. The second card is
Holy Codex!
Discipline, which triggers all
Codex is only so hard.
effects, meaning if done right you can double your triggers. So deck building is going to be pretty much just using
The book was to break all legions.
effects and smother your enemy in the ideals of the spiritual liege. That's pretty much it for what you can build with the Ultramarines. I mean, there are a few cards related to a potential vehicle build, but really that's all they got, simple yet power. Orc's main thing is their mob mechanic. This mechanic can only be triggered if another unit strike another unit in glorious melee combat. There are a few mob effects that range from getting more boys to bringing in lots of daka, and those that get more fighty. We'll get to the last one as we go over the types of deck you can build, starting with the first, which is obviously a mob deck. Pretty simple, get mobs onto a field with plenty of boys and watch the fun happen. The next deck is making use of all the boys you can summon and use buff card to start crumping. The last deck feature the last of the mob cards, which is all about getting a custom cheap vehicle. Essentially use the Spanner and Gazmech to make these bad boys into cheaper and better custom cruisers. The last thing about orcs is their unstable mechanic with their vehicles where they blow up. The Eldar have a few mechanics toward them, the first being Shuriken. This mechanic only triggers when attacking, in which it deal its Shuriken damage first, then attack like normal. The second mechanic is Waystone, which whenever an Eldar with this dies, it leave behind a spirit stone in which you can collect, or the enemy can destroy. Use these to trigger effects that cards have. From what I can tell, there are 2 decks that have a style to them. The first is Shuriken, in which you get a bunch of units and apply effect that can give Shuriken. The next is vehicle-based. The Siamhan Eldar have a nice variety of fast and powerful vehicles that have quite a few cards that make them even better. Or the third deck that combine both ideas, that being strong with speed and Shuriken, but using good defense in conjunction of the Wraith units and Spirit Stone buffs. The Necron's main mechanics are Remnant and Frenzied, which is weird that only Necron have the latter mechanic. Anyway, the Remnant effect basically leaves in which if you don't use cards that can reanimate, they'll be destroyed when you end your turn. Units with Frenzy will attack a random unit at the beginning of your turn unless a unit has Vanguard. The next mechanic, and although every faction has it, Artifice, is especially powerful with Necron having also one of the most annoying of Artifice units. Next is Chaos, specifically the Black Legion of Failbaden, but let's not get into a lore and debate. Instead, let's talk about how annoying they are and what they have. So the main mechanic of Chaos Black Legion is Dark Pact, which is a part of multiple different cards. It gives either a random or selected / specific buff of one of the 4 dark gods. So each dark god's specific Dark Pact is very simple. So Khorne's Pact is hit harder and makes the tank of a group. Slainch's Dark Pact makes you hurt more. Tzeentch's Pact grants surprisingly health and more understandably camouflage. And finally good old Grandpapa Nurgle and his Pact of Health and Regeneration. And that's just the who and how they get their pacts. There are still the cards that can use them when they're activated. The Tyranids are one of my favorite factions both in game and lore. They are probably the de facto final boss for anyone left in the Milkway Galaxy. Their gimmicks are Swarm and Synapse. So the first mechanic is Swarm, where you can combine two of the same cards, one in hand and one on the field, improving their stats. These can lead some powerful giant single cards. While Synapse focuses on group buffing, if you target a unit with a card that buffs it, it'll apply those effects to those beside itself. There are decks related to both mechanics, but the one you wouldn't expect is Spore Mines. It's a stupid, barely viable gimmick, but I love these explosive balloon spawning weirdos. Well, that's all the factions and current playstyle available to us and future players. Can't wait for the next expansion. I've been wanting something new from this game for a while now.